So here's what I told the committee. First, I had no idea of the crimes Epstein was committing. No matter how many photos they show of me, I have two things that at the end of the day matter far more than any interpretation of 20-year-old photos. I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I didn't see. And I know what I did, and more importantly, what I didn't do. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. As someone who grew up in a home with domestic violence, not only would I not have flown on his plane if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself and led the call for justice for his crimes, not the sweetheart deal that we got. But even with 20/20 hindsight, I saw nothing that ever gave me real pause. We're only here today because Epstein hid it from everyone so well for so long. And by the time it came to light with his 2008 guilty plea, I had long stopped associating with it. When the video of my testimony today is released, I hope it will motivate everyone to go in front of Congress to say what they know. I hope it will motivate the Justice Department to finally release all the files and to ensure that this never happens again. The survivors deserve that.
Former President Bill Clinton testified before the House Oversight Committee as part of Congress's ongoing inquiry into the network surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. And when he walked out, he didn't stay quiet. He made a statement that immediately reframed the conversation. I love my country, including our Constitution. No one is above the law, especially a president. That line wasn't off the cuff. It was deliberate. And it was aimed directly at the principle now at the center of this entire investigation, accountability. Clinton said he came forward for two reasons. First, to stand behind what he called a foundational American principle, that everyone answers to Congress, no matter how powerful, no matter how well connected. Second, he said he came for the women and girls harmed by Epstein. Survivors who, in his words, have waited far too long for justice. That framing matters because this investigation has grown into something much larger than flight logs or old photographs. It has become a test of whether the political system holds powerful people to the same standard as everyone else. Clinton's testimony put him squarely inside that test. In his public remarks afterward, he was unequivocal. He said he had no knowledge of Epstein's crimes. He saw nothing suggesting abuse. He did nothing wrong. And had he known, he said, he would have reported Epstein immediately. That is a sweeping denial. And in a case this sensitive, sweeping denials carry weight, but they also invite scrutiny. Epstein's network reached across politics, finance, academia, and entertainment. Questions have persisted for years about how someone convicted in 2008 managed to maintain elite social access for so long. Clinton's defense comes down to one distinction. Knowing someone is not the same as knowing what they were doing. Proximity, he argues, is not proof of knowledge, but in today's political environment, public perception rarely waits for legal standards to catch up. Clinton also addressed the subpoena issued to Hillary Clinton, defending her directly, saying she had no connection to Epstein and should never have been compelled to testify. That adds another political dimension to an already charged story, because many Americans aren't watching this in isolation. They're watching it through the lens of who is being called and who isn't and why.
I just finished testifying in front of the House Oversight Committee. I did it for two reasons. First, I love my country, including our Constitution. And America was built on the idea that no person is above the law, even presidents, especially presidents, and that we should all live under the same set of rules. This kind of democracy requires every person to play their part. And I hope that by being there today, we can bring ourselves just a little further away from the brink and back to being a country where we can disagree civilly and we can search for truth and justice, and that it outweighs the partisan urge to score points and create spectacle. The second reason I was there is that the girls and women whose lives Jeffrey Epstein destroyed deserve not just justice, but healing. They've been waiting too long for both. Though my brief acquaintance with Epstein ended years before his crimes came to light, And though I never witnessed during our limited interactions any indication with what was truly going on, I offered the little I do know in the hopes that it would help prevent anything like this from ever happening again. I also have to say something personal. Republicans made Hillary testify yesterday, and she had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein, nothing. She has no memory of ever even meeting him. She neither traveled with him nor visited any of his properties. So whether 10 people or 10,000 people were subpoenaed, including her, was simply not right. So here's what I told the committee. First, I had no idea of the crimes Epstein was committing. No matter how many photos they show of me, I have two things that at the end of the day matter far more than any interpretation of 20-year-old photos. I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I didn't see. And I know what I did, and more importantly, what I didn't do. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. As someone who grew up in a home with domestic violence, not only would I not have flown on his plane if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself and led the call for justice for his crimes, not the sweetheart deal that he got. But even with 20/20 hindsight, I saw nothing that ever gave me real pause. We're only here today because Epstein hid it from everyone so well for so long. And by the time it came to light with his 2008 guilty plea, I had long stopped associating with him. When the video of my testimony today is released, I hope it will motivate everyone to go in front of Congress to say what they know. I hope it will motivate the Justice Department to finally release all the files and to ensure that this never happens again. The survivors deserve that.
That's what made Clinton's closing remarks so striking. He ended with a demand: release all the files, all of them. He said the survivors deserve full transparency. That shifts the pressure considerably. Calling for complete disclosure sounds straightforward, but it carries real consequences. Once documents are fully public, narratives harden. Reputations are tested, and political fallout can move fast. By publicly pushing for full release, Clinton positions himself on the side of transparency. But it also sharpens the question now echoing across Washington. If he testified, who's next? This inquiry is not limited to one party. The Epstein case historically involved figures across the political spectrum. Some Democrats have argued that if former presidents are being called, that standard should apply equally, including to Donald Trump, who has previously acknowledged knowing Epstein socially. Republicans say the investigation should follow documented connections wherever they lead. Either way, the spotlight isn't narrowing, it's widening. And that changes everything about the stakes here. This is no longer just about one deposition, it's about precedent. When a former president sits before Congress and says no one is above the law, he isn't just defending himself, he's setting a bar. And once that bar is set publicly, it becomes very difficult for others to step around it. The broader context still matters. The Epstein case exposed how wealth and influence can protect people for years. It triggered national outrage, it caused lasting damage to survivors, and it left deep distrust in elite institutions that many Americans still haven't shaken. That's why transparency has become the one demand that cuts across party lines. Clinton's testimony doesn't close this chapter, it reopens it on new terms. His denials are now part of the official record. His call for full document release is on record. His defense of Hillary Clinton is on record, and the investigation moves forward. More names could be called, more depositions could be scheduled, more documents could surface. Each step will test public confidence, not just in Congress, but in the system itself. So the real question tonight isn't simply whether you believe Clinton's account. The real question is this: if a former president can be called to testify, if he can sit under oath and say no one is above the law, will that principle actually hold for everyone? Because accountability only means something if it applies across the board. After today, the pressure doesn't sit in one place anymore. It spreads, the country is watching, and the question remains: who's next? After testifying before Congress, Bill Clinton stepped outside and made a statement that spread across social media almost instantly. His words were simple and direct. "The girls who were destroyed deserve healing." That line was clearly designed to center the conversation on survivors, not on politics, not on legal strategy. But critics didn't let it stand unchallenged. They argued that expressing sympathy doesn't erase questions about past associations. That compassionate language, delivered right after sworn testimony, can serve more than one purpose. Clinton has maintained consistently that he had no knowledge of Epstein's criminal behavior. He says he saw nothing inappropriate, knew nothing about abuse, and cut off contact long before Epstein's crimes became public. His supporters say the post-testimony statement proves he understands the weight of what happened and that he genuinely wants full transparency. His critics say the timing is worth noting, that carefully chosen words delivered immediately after legal testimony can also be part of managing a public image, and that tension is real. When a former president speaks about survivors, it lands differently. The words carry weight, but so does history, so do past connections, and so does the record. That's what makes his call to release all files politically significant. If every document becomes public, one of two things happens. Either the record reinforces his denial, or it reopens scrutiny. There's no middle ground once the files are out. By pushing for full disclosure and keeping the focus on victims, Clinton positioned himself on the side of accountability. Now watch this clip.
The girls and women whose lives Jeffrey Epstein destroyed deserve not just justice, but healing. They've been waiting too long for both.
Because after that statement, the debate shifted. It's no longer just about what he said on the steps of that building. It's about whether the documents, when released, will line up with the message he's putting forward. Public trust in situations like this comes down to one thing: consistency between the words and the record, between the statement and the facts. And right now, that's exactly what Americans are waiting to find out. The moment deposition news broke, something else resurfaced online. Old footage of Bill Clinton discussing his relationship with Monica Lewinsky started circulating again, widely and quickly. That scandal led to his impeachment in 1998. It remains one of the most defining crises of his presidency. And it did not stay buried for long once his name returned to the national conversation. At the time, Clinton initially denied the relationship publicly, before eventually acknowledging it. For critics, that history is directly relevant to where we are today. They argue that past credibility battles make current denials harder for many Americans to accept. That once trust is broken in a high-profile moment, it doesn't fully recover. Supporters push back on that framing. They say the Lewinsky scandal, whatever your view of it, is a separate matter entirely, that it has no legal connection to the Epstein investigation, and that using it as automatic evidence of wrongdoing in an unrelated case isn't fair, and isn't how the law works. Legally, that distinction holds. The Epstein inquiry is specifically focused on one question: did individuals have knowledge of criminal conduct? Past personal scandals, however damaging politically, are not the standard being applied here. But politics doesn't always follow legal standards. When old footage resurfaces, it doesn't just remind people of past controversy. It brings the emotion back with it. The doubt, the frustration, the unresolved feelings many Americans still carry from that era. And in today's social media environment, that kind of content spreads faster than any fact check can follow. Now watch this clip.
I did not ask anyone to tell anything other than the truth. There is no improper relationship, and I intend to cooperate with this inquiry. But that is not true.
No improper relationship. Define what you mean by that.
Well, I think you know what it means. It means that there is not a sexual relationship, an improper sexual relationship, or any other kind of improper relationship.
You had no sexual relationship with this young woman.
There is not a sexual relationship. That is accurate. We are doing our best to cooperate here, but we don't know much yet. And that's all I can say now.
To make sure I understand what your answer means, so there's no ambiguity about it.
There is no.
All right. You had no conversations with this young woman, Monica Lewinsky, about her testimony or possible testimony before in giving a deposition?
I did not urge anyone to say anything that was untrue. I did not urge anyone to say anything was untrue. That's my statement to you.
Did you talk to her
And
about excuse me.
beyond that, I think it's very important that we let the investigation take its course. But I want you to know that that is my clear position. I didn't ask anyone to go in there and say something that's not true. I didn't ask anybody not to tell the truth. There is no improper relationship. The allegations I have read are not true. I do not know what the basis of them is other than just what you know. We'll just have to wait and see.
What's going on? What if it's not true, that means somebody made this up. Is that
Look, you know as much about this as I do right now. We'll just have to look into it and cooperate, and we'll see.
Because after you see it, the central question becomes even sharper. Are Americans judging today's testimony based on evidence tied to the Epstein case, or based on trust that was shaped by something that happened 30 years ago? That's where this debate stands right now. One story is about legal accountability, the other is about political credibility, and in the court of public opinion, those two rarely stay in separate lanes for long.